After I met them, Nina, and even now that I talk, I have major emotions because it changed me forever. Not only as a woman of that country, but also as the president leading that highest office in my country. When I met a mother that she was raped exactly the same day with her 3 daughters. She was only 37 years of age. Her oldest daughter was 17, the other daughter was 15, and the youngest one was 13. Her mother happened to be that day visiting her there, and without being able to cope what has happened to her daughter and granddaughters, she went outside, jumped into the well of water, and committed suicide. I met a mother that she was 6 months pregnant when this has happened to her. She miscarried the child, and she never had the chance of becoming a mother again. I met a mother that she was kept a hostage in an abandoned factory in that same village for over 6 months with her 5 children and in-laws, raping her every single day in front of her children, in front of her in-laws. 3 times she tried to commit suicide by drinking chemicals. And the day when the paramilitary and the police forces were ordered to leave that location, they even raped her 5-year-old daughter.
Oh my God.
So after speaking to those 35 women that day in that room, and 350 more, and 3,000 more, as the months were going on in my office, it changed me forever.
Were they were they willingly telling you these stories? They were ready to talk about it?
I remember the first because it was their initiative to get in contact with me. It was literally the very first day when I took over the office, when my protocol has said to me that there is a woman there that is continuously calling and trying to talk to you directly, but we cannot pass the phone to you. And I said, who is this woman and why you are not passing the phone? Because the protocol doesn't allow to pass the phone unverified people. And what's her story, please? I asked the chief of protocol that time, and he said, she said that she's raped during the wartime. I said, stop it now. I said, just pass the line to me. But, I said, there is no but, just pass the line on my desk. So I pick up the phone, and there was a lady in the other side of the wall, said am I talking to the president? I said yes, it's the president. I said no, it's one of her staff. I said just please pass me the president. I said, calm down, is the president. And she goes, no, this is not your voice. I don't know. I said, I don't know how my voice is coming through the phone, but it is me, it is the president. Can I please hear your story? And she goes, you need to come and meet me and 30 other women from my village, and you have to listen what we have gone through, because this is the only chance that we have 13 years after the end of the war, that we have the feeling that you as a woman, that one of us can listen to our suffering and to listen to our demands and can be fighting for our rights. And so this is how I started immediately to deal, and I knew it, that this is going to be, and I made it actually one of my top priorities in the office as the president, to be dealing with the status of the survivors of the sexual violence during the war, to bring them peace and to bring them the justice for those 13 years.
And their stories, let's fill out their stories a little bit. Obviously, you talked about what happened with the rape. What was the fallout with the men in their lives, with pregnancies from rape? What has transpired in those women's lives afterwards?
Well, before going to this, as soon as I heard these women. I came back to the office and I have asked my entire team in the office to analyze thoroughly my competencies and to shake out the entire Constitution and to find the way which will give me the power to act on this matter. Because I don't know how many of you have been, you were able to read about Kosovo. Kosovo is a parliamentarian democracy where the executive power falls under the parliament, under the government, legislative under the parliament, while the president is responsible for the foreign policy and the national security. So, legally speaking and constitutionally speaking, I had no power to act on this particular matter. At the same time, I was facing with a tremendous refusal by the entire institutions of our country, because simply I could not believe that first, we as the institution and then as the society of Kosovo, for over 13 years, we have kept this topic as the taboo topic that we have continuously built into the stigma around the survivors of the sexual violence, that we didn't do nothing whatsoever to elevate their pain, that the survivors of the sexual violence they have been going through, that we have unjustly covered them with this veil of shame and in unjustly pointing the fingers towards them as the survivors instead of pointing the fingers towards the perpetrators of these horrendous crimes. And how come that we as the institutions of Kosovo, while we have taken all of our obligation towards all other survivors of the war, we did not take the responsibility for the survivors of the sexual violence. And so many of them, or majority of them, have been living in a tremendous bad social condition, because some of them, they have been abandoned from family due to the stigma and due to the way how the sexual violence has been seen by our general public, in a way kind of like they were our shame, instead of consider them the way that they supposed to be considered, as our heroes, as our heroines of the war. Because while each and every one of us, we have been enjoying our liberty and our freedom, in the hearts and minds of each and every survivor, there is still a war. Like each and every one of them says to me, even now that I talk to them, Madam President, every time that we turn the light off and we go to sleep, these horrendous scenes come back to us. We have no peace in our hearts and mind before we see whoever has conducted this crime to be facing with the justice. We did not recognize that their bodies were turned into the battlefield, and we did not recognize that the rape has been used as a tool of war. None of the international organization that was present in Kosovo, that it is present in Kosovo, did not recognize, and is still not recognizing, even as today's day that we are speaking, for 20 years after the end of the war. Every springtime that the Secretary General of United Nations published the report of the violence against women, they do not include Kosovo and 20,000 women of Kosovo that have been raped during the wartime, that the rape has been used as a tool of war.
Why is that even the UN?
Because of the political reason, because Kosovo is a not member state of United Nations. So, can you imagine the organization which is called to protect the human rights? It is in a way violating the International Convention for the Human Rights.
Wow. So let's go back to you trying to do something about this. You're president, you've heard these stories. Talk about the pushback you got as you tried to bring justice.
Well, I became aware back in 2011 immediately, as I said, after I was elected as a president. And it took me over 2.5 years. As a matter of fact, it was the first try, was when we organized the Global Summit of Women, myself together with Secretary Albright that time, in October 2012. And as a result of this Global Summit of Women, where we had about 190 countries around the world, women leaders participating in Pristina, as an outcome we taken so-called Pristina Principles. And one of the very first topics in this Pristina Principle was to recognize the status of the survivors of the sexual violence as the civilian victims of the war. And so to my biggest surprise, I remember it was literally a month and a half after, in December of 2012, we sent these principles to be passed in the Parliament of Kosovo as the resolution in the Parliament of Kosovo, and amending the law on the war values and incorporating the survivors of the sexual violence as the civilian victims of the war. I could not believe to myself, and the ambassador was time a minister in our government, about the level of the debate that took part in my country, that took part in our own parliament, that 13, and that time actually was 14 years after the end of the war, that we had the members of the parliament, that they were even raising the fingers to propose to conduct the gynecological testing towards each and every survivor of the sexual violence. So that was reaching the boiling point for me and my office and all other women leaders in the country, that what is enough, it is enough. We cannot continue stigmatizing them more because of certain of the moral and norms in our country. And so it took me over 2.5 years to analyze where the large legal team in my office and outside of my office were in a way shaking the Constitution to find me the proper legal base. And back in 2014, I established the National Council for the Sexual Violence, which was the platform established with a special decree by the President, chaired by myself that time, which brought around the same decision-making table the Prime Minister, the President of the Parliament, certain ministers, members of the Parliament, the civil society, members of international organization, diplomatic corps, and the media. And within 1 month of the work of the National Council, the law on the recognizing the status of the victims of the sexual violence as the civilian victims of the war has been passed in the Parliament of Kosovo with the majority of the votes in our Parliament. So no matter of the opposition that we have been facing, mainly by the main politician that time, that their only argument was that the people are not ready, Madam President, to open this chapter of our painful history. But apparently they were very much wrong, that the people were ready. Who was not ready? It was certain political leaders and the power holders, that they were not sure how the people will be reacting towards that. Because I remember as soon as we passed the law in the Parliament of Kosovo, and what kind of echo this has had, not only among the survivors of the sexual violence, because for the first time after 15 years after the end of the war, they felt that they have been able to breathe freely, and that their sacrifice for war has been recognized, and that they are not anymore in a way stigmatized, and it's not anymore only the taboo topic, but they are being treated as the heroines, as they are, of our country. And so at the same time we have acted in the all other levels with their reintegration, rehabilitation, and resocialization, and all the way down to the access or to the economic empowerment as the part of the rehabilitation and resocialization processes. In this, I had a huge partnership as well while I was having the other opposition, where in the beginning when I started this topic, none of the political class was supporting me, neither the parliament, neither the government, only few of the women organizations that I have been, and I continuously be grateful that they were the only open door to them, to these survivors after the end of the war. When we as the institution has failed them, they were the one that opened the door, starting from the medical services and all the way down to the psychological service that they have provided to them. And then we have the Women Caucus, where our ambassador was a part of that. We have engaged the women ministers that time, and so to create a totally different momentum that was immediately reflecting positively also in the way how the general public was perceiving rape, which has been used as a tool of war towards Kosovo. But something that has not been addressed properly and is still one of the main handicaps for Kosovo and the survivors of the sexual violence, but it is a handicap in a global level, is the culture of impunity. Since the end of the war, we do not have not even a single perpetrator that has been put forward to the justice, neither in the courts of Kosovo, neither the courts of Serbia, neither at the international courts for the crime or where the rape has been used as a tool of war. So this culture of impunity that is dominating in Kosovo, it is undermining or putting under the shadow all of the success that we were able to achieve for this over 5 years of the intensive work and coordination with all of other stakeholders in the country. And rightly, many of the reports to today's date are referring that Kosovo is one of the best success stories when you speak about the survivors of the sexual violence. What we have done for this past 5 years that has not been done even in the Bosnia case, neither in the African countries or in the Middle East countries, but this culture of impunity and having Serbia to be more accountable and to be more responsible for the crimes that time regime has done in Kosovo. I'm afraid that success will be able to slide back in case if Serbia or the international community will not hold Serbia accountable for the crimes that they have conducted unjustly towards the innocent people of Kosovo.